Circulation of the atmosphere. So this chapter is again about winds. Just a fancy way of putting it. So there's 3 categories of circulation: microscale, mesoscale, and macroscale. Microscale being small, mesoscale being middle, right? Mesosphere, mesoscale, and macroscale being big. So microscale winds. Small, chaotic, they last seconds to minutes. Gusts is a great example, downdrafts, even some dirt devils. Right, so you see the famous picture. There's definitely some sort of gust coming up here, and that would be a microscale wind. Here's one that you could argue is micro or mesoscale. Here it is crossing the street, right? So this is more of a mesoscale. It doesn't look very dangerous. However, driving by it doesn't appear to affect anything else. Let's see, does it do any damage to the barn? Not really. The barn kind of weakens it a little tiny bit there. Mesoscale winds last minutes to hours, so you can kind of see that way. That one's probably a mesoscale. Okay. However, they're less than 100 kilometers across. So if that was a mesoscale, that's going to be a small mesoscale. Right? There's much bigger mesoscales like this. Usually thunderstorms are a mesoscale. They're pretty big, right? But tornadoes can also be a mesoscale because they last more than a minute or two, right? So here's some other examples of mesoscales. This is tornado touching down at Denver Airport. This is the radar of it. Same tornado going across Aurora, where the airport actually is. And then here's just another different mesoscale. Famous mesoscale.
We're in the core.
Okay, we got sisters.
Julia, I can't talk to you right now. We're running to the flanking line.
I realize that.
We can't attack this thing from the south. We're gonna get rolled.
Watch.
Julia, I know you're upset. You just gotta breathe. We both just gotta breathe. Cow. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows. Another cow.
Actually, I think that was the same one. Sammy, we got drunkards here. We got no path.
This is not good. Get us out of here.
I'm trying.
For it.
That was an old movie, but that was a good movie. Okay, macroscale winds. These are large wind patterns, right? So bigger than 100 kilometers across. Mesoscale is less than 100. Macroscale is bigger than 100. And so there's actually a couple types of macroscale, but one of them is planetary scale, right? it involves the whole planet, or at least a good portion of it, and can remain unchanged for weeks at a time. So like the westerlies. I referred to those earlier, but the westerlies, that would be a macro scale wind. The smaller macro scale winds are synoptic scales. Synoptic scale. And these are your things like your hurricanes and your tropical storms that we get every year. So these are synoptic macro scale winds. Global winds can be a mixture of all the scales, right? So if you look at a hurricane, it's definitely macro scale, right? It's synoptic. But it also has little bursts of it, right? Little gusts, right? They usually say, oh, winds are such and such gusting up to, right? So gusts are micro scale. So it's got macro and it's got micro. And it also contains thunderstorms and sometimes tornadoes, and those are mesoscales. So this one hurricane has all three. This is from your textbook. It's actually a pretty good example of micro, meso, and macro, right? Micro, the breeze, meso, the tornado, poorhouse, and macro, the hurricane.